What's going on, Wiz Nation? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Wizards. This is episode 36. I'm your host, Decan, along with my co-host, K. Jose, and we are the voices of the unheard. K. Jose, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. It's been a while. Back at it again. Time to get it and talk these Wiz. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. Yeah, it's been a while, bro. Like, life, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Busy. I know you had the family thing going on, so
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and then we both had birthdays that passed too, so
yeah,
we had to celebrate as well.
for sure. It was good seeing the family.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get started, for my Snowfall fans, can we have a moment of silence for Uncle Jerome?
Dang. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, man. That was a pretty crazy episode, my dude. It was. I'll be honest. I didn't see that coming. I know
uh,
talking about it.
yeah.
I know you had brought it up, but I try to avoid it so I don't see it on Twitter. I don't see it on social media, anything like that.
Right. Yeah, like I said, how I found out about it was the actor himself tweeted that, rest in peace. I said, oh, damn. He didn't just, and I don't follow him either. He just so happened to be in the algorithm. So,
Dang.
but still, I just had to see how the way it happened. And I was like, man, it still was, it was just heartbreaking just to see that. But, it's in the last season. So, I guess we should be expecting more deaths.
Yeah. I mean, these next couple of episodes going into the last one's gonna be crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of deaths, I guess we need to get started on the Wizards.
Yeah, for sure. So tonight we're just gonna chop it up. We're heading towards the end of the season.
Hmm.
And we'll just touch on some things, recent events that came about. I know Spencer Dinwiddie came out and said some things. Uh,
Right.
the Wizards are losers of 6 out of their last 7 games, I do believe. So we can
Right.
touch on that. But before we get started, if this is your first time tuning into the channel, thank you. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, now available to you, our brand new State of the Wizards store. Please visit our official site, stateofthewizards.myshopify.com. Shop all of your favorite items from personalized hashtag hats, jackets, coffee mugs, and more. Shop State of the Wizards today, where your voice matters every day. Follow me, Wizards Mafia, and follow K. Jose, DC Hoopla on Twitter. Please follow us as well, State of the Wizards on Instagram and State of the Wizards on Twitter. All right, so let's get started. So, my dude, Spencer Dinwiddie recently came out and said some things in regards to his stint. Here. We're just gonna chop it up, man. Well, how did you take that? When you heard what he said, about his time here, how did you actually, digest that information?
How I took that, it was more like a breath of fresh air. I mean, you and I, we talked about what we believe could have possibly been happening during the time he was here. We also paid attention to what he was talking about the previous season.
Mm-hmm.
So, him saying, what are we doing? That was a very valid question. Yeah, he spoke on players on 1-year deals. He spoke on, why he was playing poorly. And then he also touched on that the organization believed that Denny was going to be the next Luka. As I posted earlier on Twitter, there were reports that people thought that he was going to be Luka light.
Yeah.
Some people were saying, well, I don't know where he got that from. Well, he got it from scouts. That's what people valued him at. They looked at him as possibly being the next Luka.
Right.
That's why he was ranked so high in that 2020 draft. And Come on, man. Even though we're talking about Spencer Dinwiddie, Tyrese Halliburton had a podcast. He said that we kept telling him we were going to draft him. We didn't even work Tyrese Halliburton out. But when Denny fell to 9, we told Tyrese Halliburton, hey, we're not drafting you. And Tyrese Halliburton said, thank God, because Denny was there. So we was believing that here's our chance to get the quote unquote next Luka.
Right.
So when Spencer Dinwiddie spoke about everything he said, man, it just goes back to the common denominator. It's the same thing Kuzma's been saying, living and dying by bankroll.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to admit that, but that's pretty much what Dinwiddie was saying. He was here to be a number 2. That's what we signed him for. That's what we did the 5-team trade for. But people are saying, well, that was the mistake right there, thinking he was a number 2. But you guys didn't say that when he got here.
Right.
Now, because you have this disdain for the man, now you want to say, well, he's not a number 2, and he's also lying about the Luka compliment. I mean, the Luka comparisons when it comes down to Denny.
Right. Right. I mean, and let me pull up. I'm going to pull up the soundbite, and then we can talk about what he discussed. But let's go ahead and play it. I'm going to start it from the top here, and let's just
trying to figure out an identity, right? Going in several different directions, right? We had Rui coming back from what he was struggling with. Denny was supposed to be like the, second coming of Luka. You got Brad, who's obviously the max guy. You got the Lakers guys coming over who want to establish themselves independently of LeBron. People playing for deals and like all that stuff. And it was a situation where, I was just saying, like, what are we doing? Like, you remember, I'm coming off injury and I just signed a deal, a rather large one, right? So technically speaking, I didn't even need to play, or was I gonna need to play for a deal, nor did I need money or any of that stuff, right? So it was like, can we just lay out like what the actual plan is? Because like, I thought I was coming into a situation where I was going to play number 2 to Brad, and Brad was going to, do his 30-point thing, and then we were going to try to piece this whole thing together to try to build towards winning, right? Like,
well, let me pause it right there.
Hold on for a second, bro. I'm gonna let you get your point. I'm just laughing at Taylor Rook's reaction. You could tell she's not interested in knowing what was going on in Washington. She was just like, "Could you hurry up and get to the point?"
Right.
Like she had no interest whatsoever.
Right. Right. I mean, she could tell like he had to get some things off his chest, basically.
Right. She could tell exactly. She was
like
just letting them.
Almost like a therapist just sitting there like, yeah. So
yeah, because that's pretty much the attitude that she had. Like, I'm gonna let him get it off his chest. Really don't care about what the Wizards got going on, but let me let this man vent. But go ahead. That's why I was laughing. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was basically getting ready to say, Dinwiddie, in so many words, was saying to folks, I thought my role was this. I thought my role was to be the second guy to Bradley Beal. Like I was brought here to be the number 2.
Right.
And so when he got here, whatever was told to him, obviously, it didn't happen like he thought it was going to happen. That's why he said, well, what's the plan? What's going on? You and I both talked about this in depth when it happened, when it was live. Now we're revisiting this, and Spencer Dinwiddie, in so many words, is letting everyone know that while I was in Washington, they had some real cultural issues over there. They had some real, problems. Like, this wasn't a Spencer Dinwiddie problem more than it was a Washington Wizards problem. So because I didn't work out there, it didn't have nothing to do with me complaining about my role. It didn't have anything to do with me complaining about me getting paid. I didn't have to. You see? So, it was other folks. It was other folks who was complaining about roles. It was other folks complaining about money. It was other folks complaining, but Spencer Dinwiddie wasn't complaining. So that brings me to my point here, and I tweeted this out. I said this sounds 100% accurate, and was the culture issue as fans were confused by what players' roles were and who was doing what on the court. System looked confusing and no roles were defined outside of Bill. Same issues lingered this season, hence why I always defended Spencer. Because of the simple fact that when he was playing, there was confusion all the way around. When we was winning games, why did everybody complain about roles if you were winning games? When we were winning games, your franchise leader said, this is not sustainable. Why complain about it not being sustainable if you're winning games? So, that to me, that's what Spencer Dinwiddie's getting out there is that, well, what's really the plan if what's happening is working? Why do you guys want to change what's working? And that's kind of, looking back on it all, now you understand why he was the problem. Because there was a lot of agendas, there was a lot of propaganda, and he was the odd man out. Everyone had a problem with Spencer Dinwiddie being the number 2 guy on the team.
It's crazy. But yeah, and then now you're hearing Kyle Kuzma saying early in the season, he said that I guess he has to get used to the big three. Then he turned around and said, I've been telling the coaching staff the offense needs to run through me. Only for Bankroll to turn around after KP, I think he scored, was it 41?
Mm-hmm.
KP, for Bankroll to say, well, the offense should run through KP. Then recently, Kuzma said, well, we shouldn't be called a big three because neither one of us are all-stars this year. So he also said one last thing was, well, everybody knows this is Brad's team. We're trying to get the ball to him in the clutch. We're going to live and die with that.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the same things that Dinwiddie was saying, just a little bit different, but you're hearing that from Kuz, who the Wizards are expecting to back up the Brinks truck to. So you've had John Wall come out with his podcast saying what really happened, giving us more context, telling us he found out about the trade via Russell Westbrook, saying that when he asked Bankroll, hey, let's run it back, Bankroll tell him, I got to think about it. Now you got Spencer Dinwiddie saying what he's saying. Now, and you had Kuzma saying what he's saying. Come on, man. The proof is in the pudding. It's right there in front of you. These guys are telling you what's going on. And the common denominator is the $251 million player.
Yep. No doubt.
So I don't understand. I know that the bankroll apologists don't want to face that music, but all of these guys can't be lying.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it really points back to the leader. It points back to the coaching staff, points back to the general manager, and it ultimately works its way all the way to the top. And it points back directly to Ted Leonsis. Look, this was their direction. This is the direction that they vouched for. This is what they advocated for. This is what they wanted. We're in year 4. Tommy Shepard is yet to win 35 games as the GM in 4 years. And that in itself to me is a little embarrassing. Because you were brought in to replace a guy who didn't do the job effectively. You were supposed to be the upgrade. You were supposed to be the better option to your predecessor. You come in and you're actually the worst. You're worse than him. So right now the Wizards they're sliding. If you look at here, the last 7 games, they have lost 6 out of 7. Actually it's probably 7 out of 8, right? Because they lost to Atlanta twice. And then you had that Philadelphia meeting, and then the only one that we won was in Detroit.
Yeah, I think we're now 2 out of 9 out of our last 11 games.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean we're sliding. We're going in a totally different direction.
Totally different direction. you know, tell me, where you are right now as far as what the Wizards should do. I mean, obviously, we know that this season's pretty much a wash. It's done. It's over
Mm,
with.
hmm
Where is your mindset right now with this basketball team?
My mindset is the same mindset as the players' mindset is. They're already thinking about summer vacation. You can kind of see it in the games that there are some guys that's already thinking about. Karan Butler said it some years ago when he was a Wizard. I'm just thinking about Tahiti. There's some guys that's already on summer vacation. So where I'm at, Bankroll is not playing tomorrow night. Kuz is not playing tomorrow night. Shut them guys down for the rest of the season. Shut KP down for the rest of the season. See what you have in these young guys. See what we got. At this point, we're 3 games. I think we're 3.5 games back from the plan. I never wanted that from the get go. So why let these guys compete for playing only for us if we do make the playoffs to have a gentleman's sweep? Accept defeat. We don't need to run it back next season. But I know this organization, they're going to do it anyway
That's
because
what
you
they
can.
do.
That's what they do. They're stuck on stupid. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. But
Mhm.
at this point, the season is over. It's no need to risk some of your high paid players to get injured for a play in. To me, it's just pointless.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these numbers, man, and just out of the last 7 games alone, yes, they're shooting okay from the field at 47, 48%, but the 3-point percentage is, I mean, 4 for 26 in the last game against Denver was as bad as you're gonna get. They failed to hit 10, at least 10 threes, what 5 out of the last 7 games, they failed to hit 10 threes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're shooting a miserable 27% from the field. You're not gonna win in this league when your guys are just not being able to hit the three. Um,
Right. We're not rebounding that much either. I mean, if you look at us, where we're averaging over 40 rebounds a game, so we're not even rebounding that great. I mean, the last game that we really rebounded pretty good was against the Pistons, and the Pistons are horrible. They're not playing for anything. They're playing for another draft pick.
right.
So you have to. So let me ask you this: Is this team tanking, or are they organically tanking?
Uh, there's a such thing as organically tanking, but I just think that they have no choice because they're just not good. I mean,
Right.
like I really do. I think that, okay, you can play Kuz, you can play Bill, but what's the point of risking injury at this point if you're going to lose the game anyway? We
Right.
didn't have a shot at beating Denver. We didn't have a shot at beating Sacramento. We didn't have a shot at beating Philly. But, all of those games were gut check, reality check, whatever other check you want to throw in there. That was how we knew, whether or not we were the team that everybody thought we were or not. And we're just not that team. Atlanta, the 2 games we lost at home, it wasn't a back to back, but the 2 games, where we played Atlanta at home, those were the 2 most important games because had we won those games, it swings us in a completely different direction. Atlanta, I believe, they went ahead of us by at least 2 games. We were a half game back. I think of the 8th spot, right? If we had beat Atlanta, we would have been up a game and half a game. And if we would have won the other one, we would have been up a game and a half. So that was huge. And it hurt this team. It deflated this team. At
Did
that
it?
point, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Did it deflate the team, or did the team just come to their senses that hey, maybe the play-in is not what we want? Because at the end of the day, you know, could we really compete in the play-ins? Like, look at the teams that we would have to go up against in the play-ins. I believe Toronto was one of those teams, and I can't recall who the other team was that we had to go against. Like these are teams that we struggle against. So, in my opinion, I think that first game against Atlanta, we really wanted to win that game. But in that second game against Atlanta, I think at some point this team decided, you know what, just to hell with it, because that's when the down spiral really started. And then when you look at the fact that we lost to Orlando, and Orlando actually just beat the Knicks earlier, that was another game that I was kind of on the fence if we was going to win that game or we were going to lose that game. But when you lose to teams like Orlando, who's also playing for a draft pick, it just shows you how much we are at a disadvantage when it comes to our future.
Well, it is how can I put this? They know that they can stay in these games. They know that they can compete. They know that they can't win it. That's the difference. The difference is we can stay in these games long enough to convince ourselves that we can compete. But the problem is we can't win the game. We can't finish the game. We can't close the game. My dude, I don't know how many times this season where we squandered 15-point leads. Actually, I do know. It's about 7 times where we blew 15-point leads. And I think it's been over 10 or 11 times this season where we lost the lead under 5 minutes. Like, that can't happen. Like, in Atlanta, both of the Atlanta games, my dude, we were in both of those games. It wasn't like we weren't in it. We were in the game. We lost it at the end. And that has been the story of this team all season. That's why when you heard Kuz said, we go through Bill at the end of the games. He was frustrated, but rightfully so. Because how many times have we lost games this season where we were relying on him to close and it didn't happen? So, and I can hear other people in my ear as I say this, because they're going to say, well, it's Wes's fault because, he didn't make the adjustments and the defensive adjustments and, it's his fault, right? And rightfully so. Yes, it is Wes's fault. But the point is that we're losing these games because guys are not closing these games. That's why we're losing these games. And so to go back to your question, is it just that these guys aren't, I think you said, is it basically these guys just aren't good enough to close, or in so many words, good enough to close? The answer to that is yes. The problem is that these guys are just not good enough to win the game. That's the bottom line. So they have no other choice but to organically lose because they can't win the games.
Right.
So I get it. People are like, well, Bill didn't play last game. Kuz's been pretty much out on injury. So we're just relying on KP and a couple of other young guys to come through. And we're not going to beat teams like Denver like that. We're not going to beat Sacramento like that. So we must be tanking. My answer to that is it wouldn't have mattered if Bill and Kuz played or not. Look no further than Atlanta and Philly.
And Toronto.
I
mean, we're just not a good basketball team. And we can talk about Cleveland. I mean,
all three played in that game too.
Right. I mean, we're just not a good basketball team. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to constantly, well, we don't talk about it, but people are going to constantly keep screaming and hollering about 4 through 10. You're going to continue to keep talking about that when 75% of your cap is going into the mid 3. When you're paying those guys top tier money, the expectations for these guys to close the game out, it doesn't matter if those 3 score 70 points or 90 plus points. If you don't have the cap space to have a solid core or solid supporting cast that can assist to close these games out, you're going to always be talking about the 4 through 10. It's just going to be that way.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, so, with that said, I mean, I don't really know at this point which direction they go. No one really, I saw the questions out there, what's our future hold? What does our future look like? What is going on? And all I can think about, my dude, is we've been here before. We've been here.
Right.
We was just here last year because we didn't really know, what the new lineup was going to look like this season. We knew that KP was an acquisition. We knew Kuz was going to be the third guy, right? And they was going to try this big three thing, but we was just here last year. We don't know what it looks like after these guys contract situation. And we were here the year before that. With the Dinwiddie and the Kuz and the Trez and the KCP acquisition, we don't really Tommy Shepard to me is treating this thing like a video game, man. He really is. I mean, there is no direction.
Right.
If KP and Kuz walks, what then what?
I mean, it's looking that way, man. I mean, Kuzma just recently, well, he didn't say it, but I guess somebody's speaking for him saying that, he would like to be within close proximity of his home state of Michigan. He also, because he wants to visit family members there. He also wants to be able to have the opportunity to go down to Miami because he has a piece of property there, and he wants to be close to the Caribbean. So take that for what it's worth. You got Dulles Airport, international. You got BWI, that's the international airport. But if you got a house in Miami, that's close to the Caribbean. You can still fly up to Michigan whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
So I look at it like, okay, you got the Magic, you got the Heat, you got the Pelicans, you got the Hawks, and you got even the Hornets. And let's not rule out the Pistons. I mean, that would be considered home for him. So, he's going to have options. He has options,
To
and he
me,
knows that.
yeah, to me, when he made that statement or that report went out, it tells me he wants to stay east.
Absolutely. He's staying east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, and I think
So,
like, oh, DC's a perfect spot. And I'm thinking like that's anywhere on the East Coast. He's closer. He's basically saying
yeah,
he's
I mean,
closer on the east to fly back home, and he wants to be on the east side so he can go to Caribbean islands, like you just said. Florida is
right.
a destination. You know, um, of course, there's a couple teams that we're not thinking about that could be dark horses this season for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You never know. The Knicks could be a team,
I was just about to say the Knicks could be a team.
76ers could be one. We don't know which team that is, but for me, I'm thinking more of a big market because he likes the model, and then of course his girlfriend is a model. So I'm thinking those are things that's factoring in. Yet people, I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter yesterday, and they got to talking about DC being a beautiful city, and we know that it's true. But the sports franchises in DC are not ran properly. So people like to have a good time and party in DC, but when you talk about the sports teams, you're really not talking positive about them. Then you got to talking about what Ted has done as far as like building a practice facility, the improvements he made at Capital One. It was like, okay, that's cool and all, but that's not what's important. What's important is the product that he's putting on the court. That's the issue. We're
Yeah,
not an attraction. It ain't got nothing to do with anything outside the arena. It's
right,
what's inside the arena that reason why we're not an attraction. When you
right.
have 3 point guards who came through here that had left with a bad taste in their mouth, and 2 of them had already spoke about their experiences here, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie and Wall. Russ has never said anything, but then you even had a guy that everybody on Wizards Twitter, you and I wasn't one of those guys talking about it, but a lot of people wanted Tyrese Halliburton. You have him saying that he was happy that we didn't draft him. I said it was going to have to take somebody not that was going to have to take a player that didn't want to be drafted by us. There you go. He was happy that we didn't draft him. Why is that? Because we have such a bad culture.
Yeah, and
So as beautiful the city is, we got a bad culture, man.
I had tweeted about that earlier. It's we have a bad culture. We have a point guard crisis. And it started with Wall calling out the organization, and then Dinwiddie. Well, Russ left. He wanted out. And then Dinwiddie, he was next. He called him out, and then Tyrese Halliburton said, "Thank God they didn't draft me." And
Mhm.
I don't know how Monte Morris feels, but I don't think he counts because he's a West guy. So, it's almost like, he probably wouldn't feel any type of way because, the Wizards brought in a guy that was cool with the coach. So, it's he won't have, his complaints wouldn't be as, detrimental to the Wizards organization like the three previous guys who played here. But the point I'm making here is that, you know, those three guys or four guys, Wall, Russ, Dinwiddie, and even though Tyrese Halliburton never suited up for the Wizards, he still had a podcast where he mentioned the Wizards' name and saying that he thought we would draft him. Those four guys and how they felt and how they deemed the organization is detrimental, man, and it's damaging. What they've said, what they've done, is damaging. And you're going into this year's draft with that damage. I don't care what anybody says, my dude. No young player is going to feel confident coming into an organization who hasn't done right by John Wall, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Russell Westbrook. I don't really know why no one's factoring this in, but I can't see how Washington's an attractive destination for a young point guard.
Right.
Nobody is saying that, but I get it because we don't want to be the elephant in the room when it comes down to the league. We want to make ourselves look good. But the fact of the matter is right now, we don't look good. We don't look attractive.
Right.
That's the truth. That's the fact of the matter, man. Like, this all happened in a matter of 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
4 years, 4 different point guards. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Come on, man.
Right. Starts at the top, man. It literally starts at the top. You know, I mean, when you look at it from that, and it's been way many point guards and that. If you think, let's not forget Sato. We had 2 stints with Sato.
And Sato
You
didn't
know,
want to come back.
he didn't want to come back. We had 2 stints with Ish Smith. Hal Neto was gone. Like, we've been playing point guard by committee since Wall was really. We've been playing point guard by committee before Wall was even traded, but it's been even worse after we traded him. The
Yeah,
worst thing that could happen to this franchise after Wall was traded was Russ asking out. That was the worst thing that happened to this franchise.
exactly. And that can't be stressed enough. Russell Westbrook changed. Well, Wall really changed everything, but Russell Westbrook really changed it because Teleonsis didn't see that coming. He expected
Right.
Russ to stay. He thought that, oh well, I replaced my franchise player with a future Hall of Famer. You can't lose there. Well, that's not how the NBA works. You should have realized what you had before you made that move. John Wall wasn't the worst. Okay. Sure, he wasn't living up to certain expectations, but the point is that, you know, he was coming back from injury on a new contract, on a new deal, where he thought that he was going to be allowed to play into that deal here. That never happened. That never happened. We didn't give him that opportunity. We didn't give him the opportunity to play with the 30 points per game Bradley Beal. Okay. All of that was robbed and stripped from the fan base. All of that was robbed and stripped from the franchise player. I mean, this is what happens when you make those types of decisions, man. You know, other things follow, and we've been like this ever since.
Absolutely.
So we got about a minute.
All right. So we're coming into an end of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just getting ready to say that. So we coming to an end of part one. So stay tuned for part two. We'll continue the conversation. We'll start talking about, is it even necessary to even talk about the draft? So be on the lookout for part two.
Yes, sir. All right. Stay tuned.
What's going on? Welcome back to State of the Wizards. I am your guy, DC Hoopla, better known as K Jose. So this is part two. So we're going to continue talking Wiz Hoops. So DCAM, let's talk about this draft. Seems like everybody's talking about the draft. I tweeted, hey, the only draft that I want Tommy Shepard near is a Miller Genuine draft, and I'm not even confident enough that he'll drink that shit right. So when we talk about the draft, is it even necessary to even talk about the draft? Being so we have a general manager that just don't know how to draft.
Man, the answer to that question is we shouldn't be worried about the draft, but we will be worried about the draft because that's just what we do. Every year we pick 9th or 10th. Every year we're gonna have these expectations of wanting to fall anywhere between 1 and 5, in the lottery, and come lottery night, the reality kicks in that the Wizards are going to be drafting at 9 and 10. And then, we're going to spend the next couple weeks after that trying to determine who should the Wizards, pick up at 9 or 10. And then we're going to select the guy, and then it's going to be the guy that we don't think that it should be. But then the Wizards are going to try to sell us on the fact that he's the right guy and that he's going to be an immediate impact player. Man, I'm just tired of going through this shit, my dude. I'm tired. Like, if I can predict what's going to happen, that's how you know it's a problem, man.
Yeah. I mean, if let's just say the Wizards somehow, some way end up in the top 5 in the draft. So let's say they get the 5th pick in this upcoming draft. Because I think pretty much the top 4 is already locked in. We won too many games to even be considered, not unless somehow we get lucky and we bounce up into that. But let's say the Wizards somehow, some way ends up picking 5 or 6. Some people say, well, hey, that's better picking 9 and 10. True, but when you got a general manager who can't seem to find something at 9 and 10, I'm going to say the draft last year, I'm just going to flat out say that the Wizards just screwed that draft up on purpose because there were prospects, that were surefires that we just overlooked because we fell in love with Johnny Davis. So I'm going to say that they just literally refuse to draft on skill. But if they picking somewhere at 5, who should we be drafting a point guard or should we be drafting best player available? Like, what direction should this team go in when it comes down to the draft? Because I know it's going to have some guards up in there. What
Yeah.
do you think?
Well, so you got what's that guy? Cam. You have a couple of other guards.
Hmm.
My thing is if you're in the 5, um, you probably have to draft best player available, but I think majority of those guys are guards anyway.
Yeah,
So you're not gonna pass up on any of the needs plus the best player available because those guys top 5 are gonna be probably. I mean, this is a deep draft. Um, so I think that you know the hopes is, and I just did a sim lottery, and they have the Wizards picking at 8. Not surprising. But I think if you fall somewhere between 5 and 10, here's where I'm at. The Wizards need to find any way possible to get into that top 5. Any way possible. I understand that this draft is fairly deep. I get that. But you really need to find a way to get one of those guards in the top
right.
5. You got to find a way. If it's not Victor, then it has to be Scoot. You know, if it's not Scoot, then go out and get Cam. If it's not Cam, who's the other kid? I'm not getting his name right now. It's not coming to me. There's another one I'm
Well,
thinking about.
I would think it would have to be one of the Thompson twins.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, and I love the kids' game. Here's the thing, just like what last year with Jaden Ivey, he was touted as the best guard in the draft last year. He had a fairly decent year. We don't know. Just get somebody who's going to be decent because right now Johnny Davis and the way that draft pick looks, I feel like this draft is automatically better than what happened last year. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely,
you can't
absolutely.
get that's where I'm at. You can't get worse than what you did last year. You know, so get any one of those guys, but you can't afford to just be picking 8, 9, and 10 again. I just, the Wizards have a bad, man. It's just,
I
I,
mean, I get it. I mean, the Wizards. Let me clear up one thing because a lot of people say, well, the Wizards don't draft well outside of the top 3. I would like to
say that
say
all the time.
I would like to say that when Richard Hamilton was drafted by us, he was number 7. That was not a bad pick. That was actually a solid player for us. Now, of course, we traded him away, for Stackhouse. But
Mhm.
when he was a Wizard, he was pretty solid. But when we started picking at 10, the first player that I remember us picking at number 10 was Jarvis Hayes.
Yeah,
Then, we had Rui, which I think Rui was a solid pick. We just didn't use him right. Denny, a lot of people think that, that was a wasted pick. Johnny Davis, in my opinion, he's probably the worst out of all of them. He has an opportunity to improve. But when you look at this year's draft, I've seen some people saying, well, Scoot Henderson is too short. You got to go and get somebody that's tall. I get it. Okay, I get it. Our backcourt is very short. But what I don't want to hear when we're talking about the draft and we're talking about getting a guard, I don't want to hear, well, what point guard would make sense beside Bankroll? Why are we talking about that? Bankroll is about to be 30. We got to start talking about the future. So what I believe this team should do, you try to get another first round pick. They need to be coming out of this draft with 2 young prospects. In
mm,
my opinion, figure out a way to buy another first round pick. You need to get a guard for 1, and then you need to get a wing. You need to get a 3. Get another wing player in this draft. It's
well,
deep enough.
you see Brandon Miller in this mock draft is going 3. I,
Right.
I feel like even if you have to try to move up to get Brandon Miller, then that's what you just might have to do. I mean, man, it's so frustrating because we talk about what the Wizards need to do all the time, but we know that they're not going to do it. That's the
No,
thing. We know that they're not going to do it. So talking about it in one breath and knowing that they're not going to do it in another is like a waste of breath. Uh,
right? Because it is. Because let me tell you, the players that would be a So Wizards type players that we would draft. People some people are high on Nick Smith. Some people say, they're not too high on him. That seems like a Tommy Shepard type of guy.
mhm.
This guy in front of that you just clicked, Grady Dick, he's another type of guy that we would draft. It's always going to be somebody that has flaws in their games that we should kind of stay away from, but we would draft them because
This
maybe 9 times out of 10, that guy is probably he probably helps women cross the street or something. I mean, it's going to be something. He might have been a Boy Scout at one point in time. We
hmm
we need guys that have a mean streak and not guys that that's just good to bring home to introduce to your daughter. I'm just being honest.
Right.
Like, get somebody with some flair. That's what this team is lacking. This team is lacking some flair. We're lacking athletes. We never seem to go after those guys. Brandon Miller, he wouldn't be a bad pickup, but because he's connected to a murder, even though he didn't have anything to do with it, that's everything that Ted Leonsis doesn't
Don't
even
want.
want.
Don't want. Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter how good he is on the basketball court. What the problem is what does he do off the court? That's what
Right.
this franchise focuses on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All the unimportant shit, basically. If the athlete isn't getting like, look, Ja Morant messed up, no doubt. But even to Ja Morant's defense, he didn't get locked up. He didn't get thrown in jail. He wasn't charged with anything. But just because, they look at the thug image, or they see that he's tied to some type of thug image, yeah, that turns Ted Leonsis completely off, man.
Right. He's not gonna go after those type of guys, man. So, you know, I mean, but to your point, with this draft, there's a lot of players here that the Wizards would have to. So, like the 28th pick that they have there, that guy, he plays with Victor Wambayama. His measurements, pause, is through the roof. He's an athlete.
hmm
Everything that we need,
Yeah.
but I could see us not even trying to make a play for that guy.
I mean, man, I look at this draft, man. You have a lot of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. It's a lot of young talent in this draft. And I mean,
It's a lot of young talent, and what I would hope, depending on the situation, I think the best thing that could happen for this franchise is landing in the top three in the draft because you're guaranteed to get a young pup who can potentially be a franchise player. Like, I believe, in my opinion, depending on how the way the top three of the draft, depends on how the way it turns out. Brandon Miller could possibly go number two, and Scoot Henderson could possibly slip.
mhm,
So if we're sitting there at number three and Scoot Henderson is there, we need to be drafting him.
yeah.
But the reason why I think we won't draft him is because Scoot Henderson said, any team that drafts me, I need to be the face of the franchise. Being so we got 251 million, that's going to cause a rip in that backcourt.
hmm
So it always goes right back to the $251 million. The best thing that I would hope is what you're hearing out of Portland, which Damian Lillard came out and said, he's at his stage of his career, he's not ready for a rebuild. So
Look,
Portland has to make a decision on what they want to do. Do they want to continue to stay the course and, trade their youth away for some veteran players? Or will they be entertaining moving Damian Lillard? That's what we would hope that Bankroll would say.
look
But
what
we
just
already know that he probably is not going to say that because somebody got to be the bad guy. But
look what just happened when I simmed the lottery again.
yeah, I mean, come on, man. If we would be stupid to get the number one pick and we don't draft. We would be stupid.
The Wizards get the number one pick and pick Victor Wembanyama.
Oh man, I'm gonna tell you, if that did happen, bro, I would be so excited since the time when we got the number one pick and we drafted John Wall, I will be super excited to get Victor Wembanyama. Yes, I understand. He's 220 in weight. He's slim. He's going to get beat up in the paint. But guess what? Porzingis gets beat up in the paint as well. He can bulk up. That's all you need him to do is bulk up. Get yourself a bruiser to go alongside of Victor Wembanyama that can kind of take that, that can handle defending somebody in the paint. But you get the number one pick, man. You pick Victor Wembanyama and you worry about all that other shit later.
Oh, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you definitely pick Victor. No-brainer. That's if that happens, if this really happens, the Wizards would have no other choice but to start over and build around Victor Wembanyama. They would have no choice.
Oh, you have to.
They would have no choice. I mean, looking at his size, 7'5", 220, versatile, very versatile. He's gonna need the ball in his hands to be effective. I mean, at this point, it's give him the ball and get the fuck up out the way. Get the hell up out the way. Like, that's how I look at it.
Absolutely.
I don't want to see that man stand in the corner. I don't want to see him, in the post waiting for the ball. Like, give this kid the rock, man. Allow him to
do his job.
Do what we have seen him do, before this draft. Allow him to play his game. It's just I'm concerned for Victor if this happens, though. The concern I have is absolutely what we've grown accustomed to under the Tommy Shepard regime, is that, we want to be able to tell these athletes, what type of player we want them to become, right, in a system where we're relegating them or monitoring, what their roles are. And we're 1 minute we're telling him, he's going to have the ball in his hands, 70% of the time. And then the next minute, you may rarely get the ball, but just know we need you to be the garbage man for this team. Like, you just never know with this team, man. That's the only concern I have about with us drafting Victor Wembanyama, is that we could literally mess up this kid's future. We, the Washington Wizards, has that ability to mess up a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent, man. And that's pretty sad.
Man, I would hate that. It is. So that leads to the next thing. So we talk about how the organization will basically tell players to change their game. We already heard it when we drafted Johnny Davis. We was going to try him at point guard. He played a little point guard last night. I don't know why we're doing this. We already heard the comparisons of at one point in time for Denny being Luka, and we try to make him be the spot up 3-point shooter, which is not his game. The former Wizard and Rui Hachimura, we try to make him be a 3-and-D type guy, make him shoot threes. That's not his game. So speaking of Rui Hachimura, the talk is, what is he going to get this offseason when it comes to a contract extension? A lot of people are saying he should settle for the mid-level exemption. The Lakers are talking about they're going to try to re-sign him, but it's going to be somewhere, I think it was like $10 or $11 million. If he wasn't going to take that here, if he wasn't going to take $13 million from us, why the hell would he take $10 million from the Lakers? But people are saying, well, Rui has to accept that, he's been injured. He needs to take the money that he's given. What do you think about that, man? What do you have to say to people who are saying, hey, Rui, you just need to take whatever money a team is going to give you because you're not going to get above mid-level exemption?
Well, they're not factoring in that the mid-level exemption is going up. Like, that automatically puts him in a higher, a possible higher contract. Other teams are willing to offer over the mid-level exception. It's just that's how the NBA operates. If a team says that they're offering him the MLE and he's looking for more, he can get more on this market. That's just how it works. Not every team is going to value him the same way. You know, you saw that the Wizards was willing to offer him $13 million before they shipped him off to LA. I'm sure that there'll be another team that's willing to offer him more than $13 million on the market. There's going to be a lot of teams that's looking for a young player who has that in between game, who he can put up points, he can score in bunches, do it inside and out. And there's tons of teams who needs that type of talent. It's just that what's unfortunate for Rui with the Wizards and the Lakers, he's playing behind someone who they feel is a better fit for the system. You know, if Rui was on a team that was more so allowing him to play his game, then he's going to put up more points and more minutes, given more opportunity. But the two teams that he was on this season, us and the Lakers, were middling. We're both middling teams. So who are we to tell Rui, as middling teams, that he's only worth between $10 and $13 million? There's going to be a team.
Right.
There's going to be a team out there who needs Rui. And they're going to say to themselves, we'll pay you more than $13 million to come play for us because we value you more than those other two teams.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that because I think the asking price for him is going to start at 13 million.
Yeah, it'll be right there, about 13. 14.
It'll be right there. I mean, it's going to be an offer sheet, and if the Lakers are already putting it out there, what their number is, then we know he won't be coming back in the purple and gold. So it'll be a team that's going to offer him possibly, maybe 14, 15 million a season, and they just not going to match it.
Well, let me say this too. The Lakers, first of all, they've already said that they weren't interested in Kyrie Irving.
Right.
Right. So let's put it this way. They would have to let Rui walk. They would have to. I think Austin Reeves even is coming up on a contract extension.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would have to let him walk. They would have to allow guys to walk to free up some cap space just if they ever wanted to entertain. And I think D'Angelo Russell, they would have to find ways to get rid of his contract as well in order to acquire a Kyrie. So the thing is when we talk about Rui, they're already lowballing him in this aspect because they're looking at it like, well, on the other side of the fence, if we allow you to walk, we're saving $10 million on the cap for potential Kyrie signing if we need to. So they're looking at it like, well, if Rui walks, Rui walks. They're not valuing him the same way as they would a Kyrie Irving, for example. So they're okay with freeing up money. The thing is that Rui's camp, we already know Rui's not going to accept $10 million. Rui is just Rui's already put it out there that he wouldn't accept $13 million. So they're looking for more than that. And and all signs point to Rui not returning as a Laker.
Right. That's what it's looking like. So he's gone. We already talked about what we got in return. Kendrick Nunn ain't getting any minutes. He's getting a bunch of DNPs. He's coming in garbage time, so it's trash. Those 2 draft picks, you say they're in middle school. I say they're time capsules. Can't open them up until the year that you can do anything with them. So now we got Xavier Cooks, who Tommy signed from the Australian League. They signed him to a 4-year deal. Okay, so he 4-year deal we're talking about. Fits the timeline of whose contract? Bankroll, because he got 4 more years left. Xavier Cooks is 27. He's athletic. He has a high motor. That's cool. but he can't shoot. So
Mm,
basically, what you're getting is you're getting a cheaper version of Jason Collins.
mm, mm.
That basically spells what? Denny being let go. He could possibly get moved this offseason. He could possibly get moved during the trade deadline. What do you have to say about the way Tommy Shepard is constructing the team where he's failing in his own draft picks and now he's going out there and say, let me find international players or find guys to cheat in these leagues, that we don't care about or we don't know about. Or if I can just go to the YMCA and see somebody out there, hey, you know what? I can get that player to do what Monte Morris is doing for a lot less.
I'm gonna tell you, I don't like it because first of all, it's very Ernie Grunfeld like, number one, and then number two, it's not as good as what Ernie Grunfeld would do. And the reason why I say it like that is because Xavier Cooks, while he was the NBL MVP, right, and they won a championship over there, there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough on this guy for us to sign him. I don't even think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any other NBA team, I don't think any other NBA team was interested in him. I
I
know
don't think
Josh,
so either.
I know Josh Giddey tweeted something about him needing to be in the league or whatever, but to just magically see him come from the NBL to the NBA and expect him to replicate his performance from that league over here in this system that's already struggling to provide us with consistency at his spot, at his position, and no other NBA team being interested in this guy and him really being well below the radar, I don't like it. I just don't. How was Tommy Shepard the genius in this? He traded away his own draft pick, his own lottery pick. It didn't work. So now, how do you make up for that? Oh, well, let me go sign Xavier Cooks over in the NBA, over from the NBL. And his reasoning for getting rid of Rui was to give Denny more minutes. Well, now Xavier Cooks could possibly replace Denny in that role, if Denny doesn't perform. I'm looking at it like, well, how does Tommy get the credit, or how does Tommy, or why should Tommy get the credit for bringing him over when he couldn't even make it right with his own draft pick in Rui Hachimura, and
Right.
and he may not be able to make it right with his own draft pick in Denny Avdia.
Right.
Now you have another special assignment, for this player. Xavier Cooks right now, my dude, looks like a project. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of hate to say that, but when I saw him in the little 6 minutes that he played, I didn't really see anything. I didn't see anything.
Right.
It really wasn't anything that made me go, oh, this guy looks like he's going to be a special talent. I get it. It was in garbage time and he's just kind of filling it out and he's just trying to see where where he fits. But I don't know, man. I mean, sometimes the eye test tells you before you see anything else. The eye test right now tells me that, it's going to take some time. It's just like Johnny Davis. It's going to take some time. If people thinking he's going to come in here and just put up immediate numbers, that's not happening. At least that's what I'm seeing with the eye test, but I could be wrong. I want to give Xavier Cooks, I want to give him that shot. I don't want to put him so quickly in with the rest of the failed projects of Tommy Shepard. I really want to give this guy a shot, but you know me, man. I got to see consistency. You got to prove it to me.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I mean, I didn't see much of him. I don't know what to expect of him. I mean, I can look at the highlights. I mean, he was a MVP in his league, but I believe Denny was an MVP as well, for Israel. So we gotta keep that same energy. If people are gonna sit there and say, "Well, the MVP didn't mean anything for Denny," it kind of doesn't mean anything for me, even when it comes down to Xavier Cooks. Can you bring that over to the league? First of all, the strike's already against you because you can't shoot. Everybody's complaining about Denny not being able to shoot. So now we sign a guy who can't shoot. And again, I'm going to continue to harp on it. The dude is 27 years old.
Mhm.
So
His age
his
matters,
age is already working against him as well.
right? Because
We
you're,
don't have a lot of time for him.
yeah,
He's currently right now in his prime years. He is who he is.
damn, yeah,
So, and we don't have a point guard to throw that ball to him where he can go up there and slam dunk it because he's really an Australian version of Jason Collins. We couldn't get Jason Collins. Well, let's go sign out Jason Collins over there down under. Tell him to get away from the dingoes. Come on over here. I
man,
mean,
I'm gonna tell you for real. I mean, look, Jan Vesley was an MVP over there, not in the NBL, but Jan Vesley was an MVP in 2019. If we're going off of this notion that he's going to make this immediate impact because he was an MVP over there, then we should have just went ahead and brought Jan Vesley back.
yeah.
Jan Vesley plays the exact same style. If you ask me, Jan Vesley was supposed to be that kind of player, right? A Jason Collins type of
Mm-hmm.
player, right? He was the MVP over there just a couple years ago. You could have brought him back. You could have been like, let's all welcome back Jan Vesley. You know,
Pretty much.
I mean, again, just 4 short years ago, Jan Vesley was the MVP over there. The Wizards could have signed Jan Vesley off of his MVP year if we're going off of this logic. We could have. But again, my dude, and Jan Vesley's 30, 31? He only
Mm-hmm.
4 years older than Xavier Cooks. He's only 4 years older. So you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that, but his age matters, man, because it ain't like a Johnny Davis where we're giving him 4 or 5 years to really come into the player that we expect him to come into off of a rookie contract. This man is he's set in his prime years right now.
Yeah, he is.
And,
I
and
don't
he
think
ain't
people
got
are
no
factoring.
and he ain't got no shot.
We're in trouble. You got another guy that can't shoot. We got another guy that cannot shoot. He's 27 years old. I don't know if he turns 28 this year. If he does, there you go. So he is who he is. Um, Tommy's not going to get any credit for that. He's just a used car salesman. I don't know why people make excuses for him. People say, well, his trades and his trades are pretty good. He can trade pretty good. He's okay.
Yeah.
Only thing we can sit there and say is he was able to get Porzingis, but we don't know what the Mavericks were going through when it came down to them getting rid of Porzingis. First of all, we didn't even know that the Wizards was even looking at Porzingis. We didn't even know that Porzingis was even on the market. At least I didn't know
Yeah.
that he was on the trade block. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Well, that will conclude this episode of State of the Wizards. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. Definitely go purchase that merch, man. Go out there and get that merch, State of the Wizards merch. We'll be working on Series 3 coming up soon. I am your host, K. Jose. D-Can, you got anything to say?
Nah, man, I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. When we have these gaps where the episodes aren't coming through, just know that we're still working. We're still, thinking about you guys, and catch us on Twitter, man. We're always on Twitter. We're always talking Wiz Hoops on there. So just follow us, continue to support the channel, and we really appreciate all your support.
All right. Well, this is State of the Wizards. We sign it off. Guys, have a good one.